Another Sales Wisdom podcast, guys, with Scott Cowley. Today, he is founder at the Sales Mastermind. We're going to talk sales. We're going to talk about various sales role that Scott held. We're going to talk mastermind coaching, everything in between. Scott, welcome to the pod. Glad to have you here. Can you give us a short intro about yourself and tell us what you're up to nowadays?
Yeah, sure, Charles. Super excited to be here. So I'm actually very recently moved continents. I moved from the UK to Australia, where I've been living in the UK for the last 8 years. So I'm very much in a rebuilding phase in my life. Very quick intro. I'm an accountant by trade, turned salesperson, who typically I've worked with founders who sell but aren't salespeople. That's been most of my career lately. Really quickly as well, I've sold into every major geographic region and cultural region, and or every inhabited one. The next, if anyone who's listening to this can help me, the next one is I want to sell something to Antarctica, and then something to space, because then I'd have all 7 continents and beyond. So
What
if
about
you can help me
Greenland?
with that, let me know. I
Did
mean,
you
why
sell to
not?
Greenland?
I have sold to Denmark, and I'm going to claim Denmark as the technical authority. It's a technicality, I get it. Although I have, interestingly enough, I did sell to one of the French islands. I can't remember which one it was, the name of it, but there's a French island, maybe 6 kilometers from the coast of Canada, very close to Greenland. I have sold a piece of software there, so kinda.
French island near.
Yeah, it's like Saint something. There's 6,000 people that live there. It was a Zumba. It was a Zumba studio, and this woman used to deal with up to 150
Right.
people doing
Saint-Pierre
Zumba.
and Miquelon.
That's the one. Yep, I have sold software there, so I'm going to claim Greenland by Saint that one you said,
Yeah.
and also I've sold to Denmark.
Dude, you're giving me geography classes. I didn't even, well, I mean, I knew about Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, but I didn't even knew that, yeah, it was a French-owned island. But yeah, thank you for that. And for the Antarctica, I'm gonna help you. So like I'm doing these expeditions myself. So yeah, probably I'm gonna go in Antarctica, knowing my crazy self in the next 10 years. What we'll do, you will call me and you will send me a Stripe link or something, and I'll buy from you whatever that is. And so you can check
Oh,
that
Charles, let's
mark.
do it. Let's do it. I'm excited already.
But yeah, you'll need to ship me the thing, whatever I'll need, like by drone by then. So like maybe I don't know a toboggan or skis, something useful for my expedition, or a burger. Yeah, ship me a burger. I'll be quite hungry
Okay.
by then.
Are
So
you a cheeseburger guy
yeah,
or
yeah,
without
with
cheese?
bacon,
Yep,
obviously.
cheeseburger with bacon,
Yeah, with
obviously.
big fat bacon, and if it could be a double, triple, let so be it. And
Well, that's
since
just
I
life. If it's not a double triple, like what even is it?
right, you need to go all in. Like people are like talking about vegan stuff nowadays. Me, I still get very much good energy out of my burgers, by the way. And you're taking me on my last mile today, so like it's OMAD diet, 1 meal a day. And yeah, I'm picturing a
Oof.
burger, a big juicy burger right now. So not sure if I'll pull the trigger on that, but you're beginning
Well,
your
let's
day
let's
on your
also
side.
let's also just talk about the real MVPs of the natural world. There is no one else. Like the pigs are amazing because pigs can turn like lettuce into bacon. I think they're the
Wow.
real MVPs of the
Or
natural world if you
grain,
think
right?
about it.
I think that's like what they feed them. But yeah, pigs also, their organs can be used for transplants. So like I'm having a lot of biotech folks on this podcast nowadays, and so forth. So yeah, that pigs are quite good, and I'd recommend the documentary I'm watching, which is about cloning.
Oh
What
yeah.
if you could clone a Scott and have him do limitless dials for you?
Or see, I've thought about this before. I've thought
Or
about
co-found a business with him, so he would work at night and you would work during the day.
Okay, that's probably a little bit more ethical, but I've always thought about like
Right.
if you clone someone, because have you seen The Prestige?
No.
The it's been around for at least 10 years, so this is not a like early spoiler, but the core tenet of The Prestige is that one of the magicians is a twin and they hid it for their whole lives, and the other magician finds a cloning device and he clones himself every single time he does this trick, and he murders the original version of himself every time. It like falls into and it drowns. So I don't know where I stand ethically. I mean, also, I don't know if the world needs more Scots. My missus would probably argue the world doesn't need any more. So yeah, if I could clone myself, would I? I probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't, because I also find one of the things I do love working with people as well, especially in sales, is you get to meet everyone and from all different walks of life, from all different styles, all different types of people. And I find that one of the things that keeps it interesting is everyone's got a different story, and you never know what that story is. I was listening to a podcast the other day of a former deputy prime minister of Australia. And this guy is like a weapon. He got a lot done. He was a really, really impressive character, and I've been impressed with him for years. And I only found out the other day that he actually accidentally was the reason his sister died when she was very young. And he started talking about the trauma around that, and you're just like, whoa, did not expect that from you. So I think that I wouldn't want to clone myself. I'd want to work with someone different, because then you're always learning and you're always getting new experiences.
Right. Oh my God, that's terrible. I read the biography of, was it the King of Spain or the King of Monaco? I can't remember, but he apparently shot his brother in the head, and people didn't know what, if it was like accidental or not. Probably they were playing, and he pulled the trigger just
Yeah.
to, but like you don't do that. But I mean, as kids, we're quite cruel. So myself included. So it's like, yeah, you're not yourself. When, well, you're not your mature self when you're a kid. So yeah, I can't imagine. I love sales for the same reason. I love podcasting for the same reasons. I get to get different fragments of life. And I posted actually today one of my weird posts. But I want to have my own country one day, and I've been more elitist and technocrat that I would like to, and to kind of moderate these opinions of mine and probably put a bit of water in my wine to have a whole community and diverse, not in the sense of the woke diverse that we're experiencing nowadays, but just the IQ sense of it. I need to talk to various folks from all walks of life, like you said.
Mm.
So for example, today I had the CEO of the nightclub association of UK. So it's like 100 bars and nightclubs, and big tough guy that played rugby and so forth. And it was a very fun conversation. And it's like this super skill that you need to nurture. Me, I think I learned that skill when I was at party, drunk at like 15, talking with people, but just being this social creature that can kind of adapt to anyone, and have a thoughtful conversation and grab insights or make people at ease, whatever their background, and whatever their current emotional state, right? Or they're angry or they're tired. I think, do you think that a great host can get the best and most juicy and most interesting information slash stories out of anyone, even if that person is super boring or closed?
No, I think I think it's I think someone has to be open to giving the best before the host has to do their job. Like I listened to a podcast that Tim Ferriss interviewed this woman, and then I listened to a podcast of another guy who I've got a lot of time for, but he's a very average interviewer. He doesn't often have people on his podcast. He had the exact same woman on, And the difference in the conversation was just extreme. Tim Ferriss is an absolute master at getting the best out of people. However, I think even someone at that level, or if you go the British example, if we keep going with your UK example, there was a journalist named Jeremy Paxman, or something like that. And he was phenomenal at getting things out of people that you wouldn't expect. But I think the subject has to be open to the conversation. I don't think you can't force someone to do something they don't want to do that much. You can, and a lot of journalists have built their career on getting people to say things they shouldn't have said. That's a different story, but they have to be open to have a conversation in the first place. It's the old "it takes two to tango." Like, you can't have any sort of relationship if there's only one person actually putting in the effort. That being said, a phenomenal interviewer will get a significant amount more than an average interviewer, or even a bad interviewer with a great interviewee.
I think an AGI could get anything out of anyone, whatever their states or their. Well, I mean, the IQ can be maxed out. If the memory is there, it's there. If it's not there, it's not there. But an AGI could get like anything out of anyone. They just have to touch a sensible note, And it's the same point that I make to myself. If I was, if you were an AGI, Scott, for example, you could have me break down in 2 seconds. You just have to hit the right note. And we all have that like story or vulnerability in our system. Either that will make us super sad or super angry or super lit up, which brings me to my next topic, the clone. Yeah, sure. The physical clone first. It's not legal in many countries, and talking about that because of the recent documentary I'm watching, but AI is a thing, so you can have this virtual Scott. What are you using AI yourself in your business to
Yes.
generate more sales? And how far have you taken it so far?
Second question, not very far. First question, yes, I'm trying to work it out. Have I used it to generate more sales? Not yet. I'm using it for content. I'm using it for I mean, I was talking the other day with one of my consulting clients, and they are working with a business, and they were genuinely like, we don't know what this company actually does. And it's one of those nebulous, you go on their websites and it's like, we do this for the betterment of humanity. And you're like, that doesn't mean anything. So I went, okay, guys, well, look, I don't actually understand what they do either. I've looked at their website. So two things need to happen. One, we need to come up with a hypothesis of what they actually do, and we need to validate it. Let's just ask ChatGPT right now and see what happens. And we ended up coming up with something. We then there were two people on the call, and one of them went off and actually read their financial statements to validate it, and the other person went off and made a couple of calls to the business themselves. But that's like an example of, it's great for research. I remember years ago, I was involved in this very senior person was paid to attend a dinner, and they were paid by a cybersecurity company who did some cool stuff. And I instantly looked at their website and I just went, oh yeah, they're a cyber vendor. They're doing A, B, and C. And the senior person said, I don't know what that means. Can you write me a one-pager? So when I'm sitting down with them, I'll read it on the way to the dinner. When I sit down with them, I'll know who they are, because they've paid a lot of money for me to attend this event. It was a political fundraiser. So they've paid a lot of money. I want to know who it is. ChatGPT or any of those platforms. I haven't really used any of the other ones, but give me a one-pager on, let's just pick a random cybersecurity company. Give me a one-pager on CrowdStrike, or give me a one-pager on HackerOne, or whatever it happens to be. As long as you've got your question structured properly. It took me a day of work to write that one-pager for that person. That's one way I've been using the AI stuff that's coming out. Another way is changing the tone of the emails. I've been known, in fact, a job that I ended up leaving was because I sent a message. I mean, I was 19 at the time. So this is a long time ago. But I sent an email that was a little bit too aggressive, as most 19-year-olds do. Now, I've done this a few times. Go in, post the email in and say, make this softer, make this less, or write this in the tone of whatever. Um, it's the ability to rewrite things. Pretty cool. There's some cool stuff happening there. How, Charles, how are you using AI in your businesses?
Well, I'm reading your LinkedIn post right now. And for example, customer success, right? So I told my team today before hopping on a call with a client, give it a bit of data and ask GPT what questions they should ask the clients, what PowerPoints or highlights of the call they should mention to add value and to generate trust in this client. What insights can they tell the clients to add value to them? That's like one that comes to my mind. For sales, I started using this thing called clay.com. I had Eric Nowalowski on my pod, and he makes like great demonstration of how to use AI. And for example, an outbound campaign that I'm deploying, that my team, that my op started deploying actually today, is the 3 Ideas campaign coined by Eric. So it's like, okay, your company, you do, for example, you do fintech and your targets are big banks. So me, I'm gonna send an email and I'm gonna tell you my company top leads. We're gonna do a cold email for partnerships with GP Morgan. We're gonna do a campaign of referrals with any growth marketer in your space. And so random idea. And we're going to do a direct sales campaigns asking them for a demo call. So it's going to write, GPT is going to write these 3 ideas that are personalized per company. And yeah, that's quite powerful. I just use it before that call for content to ask me 10 questions. So I just film myself with Vidyard and answer these 10 questions that some folks would ask me before using my cold email services, for example. So bunch of use cases here. And one that I could think of, which is a nice segue for the next topic, I guess, is for masterminds, right? So you and I are in masterminds. It's something that we're both very bullish on. Communities could be some kind of keyword, but let's say that we have a mastermind call, right? We're 4, we meet once a month. I could ask GPT, let's say that I'm the moderator, right? By the way, I have questions for you about that, but I would ask each member about their goals. Did they accomplish these goals since last time, for example? And I would ask GPT to tell me like, okay, what should I give as per value for this new mastermind member? What news in their industry should I share with them? How could I add value during that call? Or how could I structure this mastermind call? Let's say that, okay, this month is roundtable, next month is XYZ concepts. So I would meet like ChatGPT is this constant sparring partners to get new ideas, basically.
Yeah, I think it's the things that the generative AIs that we're looking at now, what they can do is anything that doesn't require human to human interaction, and even some things that do. So I know of an AI chatbot out of Germany that's doing some really, really cool stuff. I know the founder there, they're moving the needle. But one of the companies I'm coaching and working with right now as well, they work with engineering firms. And during the planning process, normally you have an engineer sit down and there's this really banal task they have to do that takes a couple of days, and they have to basically mark up every single document 1,000 times or whatever it happens to be, and no one wants to do it. Everyone hates it. But they've got to be certified, and like, this is an expensive person. These guys have worked out a way to annotate those documents to about 80% accuracy. So you've taken the first step, which is the person sitting down and doing the annotations. That takes normally 2 days in their estimation. They've taken that down to 5 minutes. You still have to have a human go back and check it because it is a compliance-based thing. And like, you can't rebuild a building. You can't MVP a building or lean startup a building, which is slightly different to the software world. But when you put a building up or a tunnel or something like that, you have to have someone go back and look at it. But they've taken kind of what was a minimum 3-day process and they've just knocked 2 days out of it. So there's a lot of, and I think those tasks are anything that doesn't, it's not face to face, anything that's not human facing. Look, we're still going to need podcast hosts, we're still going to need salespeople, we're still going to need coaches, we're still going to need the CEOs making the decisions. But there is definitely anything that's not human interaction can be automated, can be turned into those AI tools. And that's that research piece though that you've talked about, like, hey, I've got these 3 people joining my mastermind, what should I talk about? Or I mean, I've also used ChatGPT when I was doing some of the LinkedIn posting. This is my topic, this is what I want to talk about today, write me a 500-word piece. Now, I never post that directly, but if you paraphrase it, if you, hey, actually, I don't like idea number 4, let's get rid of that. Like that used to take me an hour, 45 minutes minimum. Now, it's not bad. It's pretty good. It cuts it down to maybe 10 minutes. Do that 10 times a day, and all of a sudden you've got 3 or 4 hours left in your day that you can go and either spend on other things or go and do something else with your life that's not work related.
Right. I have a bunch of mastermind related questions. So where do you want to take your
Sure.
mastermind this year? Like, what was the thesis behind it? Me, I'm constantly reshaping it as well. It's not an easy feat, you constantly need to review your goals. Am I achieving that goal? Me, it was a quality problem. So I stop it sometimes, then I restart it. It's also like a time equation, so it's like, what was the thesis behind the mastermind? Then I heard that you kind of stopped it recently. How are you gonna restart it and make it more successful according to your goals this year?
Yeah, good question. So my original thesis when I started the mastermind a good couple of years ago was there are a lot of salespeople, so account executives and sales reps, and we're talking like individual contributors who could benefit from having someone who's not within their organization to bounce ideas off. That was my original idea. That I think that was a problem that did need to be solved, but it turned out that most sales reps were not willing to pay for something external. It was a very, very small number were willing to pay. So I ended up only getting a couple of people interested to pay for it. So what I pivoted to very, very quickly was founders who sell but aren't salespeople. Now, this came in 2 forms. It was European development agencies who wanted to outsource from Eastern Europe to Western Europe. So you're talking, I had a guy in North Macedonia, had a lot of people in like Serbia, Romania, Eastern Europe, Poland, there was a fair few people. And they wanted to sell their services to Western Europe or the US and the Americas, and they just didn't know how to sell. So that was one group that ended up joining and keeping them entertained. But then the other group that ended up joining was a lot of SaaS people, a lot of technical founders who they knew how to do the skill, but they didn't necessarily know how to sell the thing, or they knew how to do, they had a business that was doing all right, but they wanted to go further. And I often found the SaaS people actually weren't bad at sales, but they did fulfill that original thesis. They wanted a group of people to talk to who are completely external. Now, what ended up happening with that group is it was a Slack community. It had weekly calls. We had some emails. There were a few things happening. Two things happened. One, I ended up taking a job with one of the people in the community, and then building the sales team at Custify, my previous employer. And I was there for a good couple of years, and like we smashed some goals. I'm super proud of the work I did there. But to do that, to build a sales org from the ground up, and the official title I had was VP of Sales, that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of energy. I didn't really have anything left for a mastermind, so I ended up shutting it down. At least the Slack Slack piece, and I'm about to relaunch it, and I'm starting with a newsletter this time. So that's actually launching next weekend. I've got an email going out to everyone who was on my list previously later today. If you guys are interested in a if you're a founder who sells but doesn't consider themselves a salesperson, just go to thesalesmastermind.com/newsletter, and you can join there. And the whole point there is I want it to be one hyper actionable tip that you can do per week, in your very next sales call. So it's going to be really, really short emails, really hyper focused, because I've now built 8 sales organizations in small businesses where it was the founder, maybe 1 or 2 sales reps when I joined. And then they actually had a repeatable process, and their sales literally, like, you can point to when I joined and when I was finished. And those people still come back to me. So I've done this a few times now. What that will probably eventually turn into, the problem with masterminds and the problem with any sort of business, if you try and build it that way, you've got 2 sides of the coin that are really hard. You've either got distribution, as in how do I get people to join? Hence why I'm starting this time with a newsletter. So if I can get 100, 200, 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 people onto a newsletter, you will never run out of high quality people to join a mastermind. The second problem is delivery. How do we actually make this thing work so that people are actually getting value out of it? It's like any services business. It's distribution, it's delivery. Very different to product businesses, obviously, but having to reinvent that. I mean, I went through so many iterations. We had multiple calls a week at one point when everyone was assigned to a call, and at another time we had 1 call and anyone could join at any time. And another iteration we tried was actually was pretty successful, having the wins channel. So in Slack, having the wins section, and everyone had to post a win every week. That was kind of the, like, what have you done this week? Because I find especially founders, so like founders who sell but aren't salespeople, are really bad at celebrating their successes. They're really bad at it, and you can probably relate to that, Charles, because I'm also really bad at that. Whenever I run a business, I really struggle. So we forced them to do that. So then that was one way that we were able to get engagement up, and yeah, it's. I think we had a pretty good model at the end. It just turned into a lack of distribution. We worked out delivery. Distribution was the issue. I didn't have much of an email list. I wasn't really doing anything with it at the time. And then, yeah, I ended up taking that job. So it didn't work there, but it's being kickstarted. And I think if I also, the other thing, Charles, I'm really curious, how do you think about masterminds? Some people assume that they are like a group of a few people get together on a call and they just talk to each other. Other people see it as like you pay a couple of $1,000s and go and sit in a room and listen to someone talk, and there's 1,000 other people there. Everyone has a really different idea on what a mastermind is. What do you consider a mastermind?
Yeah, etymology, which is one of my favorite topics, the meaning of words, and
Yeah, love it.
precisely like the image that pops in people's minds. So I think masterminds are somewhat getting a bad rap nowadays. Who owns mastermind.com again? Is it this
Sam
Grazielski guy?
Ovens? Oh no, Sam Ovens is
Mastermind.com.
consulting.com.
Yeah, I think it's the Grazielski's guy. Okay, so that
Oh, Dean
explains why.
Graciosi.
Yeah, that explains why like people
Yeah.
think it's cheesy, because yeah, Dean is he's a valuable guy. I'm probably gonna have him on my pod, but he's kind of cheesy, you know. He overdid marketing.
He has a skill.
Yeah.
He has a skill that I've never seen anyone else do. He can successfully sit on a webinar for an hour and a half and say nothing. Say nothing of value. And you're like, how? Dude, that's I find that genuinely impressive.
I think his best skill is having Tony Robbins hang out with him for that long. And I mean, I'm pretty sure the guy is a legend, but the thing is like the perception of the market right now is, for example, he overdid the ads. So like a la Tai Lopez, and I think the perception of people is like, yeah, this cheesy guy. Obviously, he's successful. He has the cash, like to buy mastermind.com. I think he's been really successful at real estate and let the compounding do its work. And that in itself is impressive. He's done these infomercial, but bottom lines come back. I think the mastermind word right now is associated with, the ClickFunnels crew, which is another truism and weirdism, because they're all associated one another. And meaning if I pitch that to a SaaS founder, I do think he's gonna get that reference. So then comes the question, okay, what other keyword should we use? Because copywriting obsessed guy with the cold email business should be community. Community is too smooth, Mastermind has this alphaism in it. Community sounds like communism. And it's like, or even worse, before communism, it sounds like hippy dippy communities, that like, let's go build a commune down in South America and everything will be magic. And next thing we know, people are exchanging blows and crying because of human nature. Anyway, that's my weird mind at work. But can we find a better word that encompasses these groups of smart people exchanging one another? Because that I think that's a perception of the word. Now, I can make it cool. Obviously, I need to find better words, and it's not just me making it cool. It is cool, a mastermind. It is sensationally good to have equal, if not better, CEOs in the same room and share knowledge, share insights, share softwares. I've discovered amazing softwares because of folks that are on my mastermind, and the software is equal to like 10 employees, right? So that's like great amount of money. And I've also shared some tough stories on these masterminds, and heard some tough stories also, like, and we just relate, it's like warriors. It's like Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, right? It's like, founder story that time where we fucked up and we lost this deal, or we're struggling in these economic times. So I see humongous values in mastermind. The guy that is, well, first, even before Sam Parr that launched Hampton, I think he's onto something there with masterminds. There was this mastermind called Chief. It's like women only, and I think they were killing it. They have like more than 10,000 or 5,000 women CEOs. I think like they started doing it really well, right? What keywords do they use? We could go check on their website and analyze that. But they're definitely making mastermind calls, and I'm definitely taking notes from them.
It would be interesting to see what keywords, but at the same time, I think understanding women do communities better than men. Women do collaboration so much better than men.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here, I was the estrogen thing, is that it's power women. So it's like testosterone women also, which is super interesting. They have the money, they have the power, but they still have this woman thing, which is to unite and to think long term, which us men are lacking. I had a woman on my pod today, Sue is her name, and it gets me thinking. What would future business look like? It would definitely be a strong mix of testosterone, like Elon Musk style of just like going for moonshot, but it would also be very much long term. I think the next like $1 trillion company is like a very, very long term thinker that values relationships over destruction, kind of, destruction being like dissing people openly on Twitter and so forth. So what do you think
Yeah, I
about
think
that?
I can't remember who said this. It was very recent. But if you want to see where the world will be in 4 or 5 years, look at what the rich are doing right now. And the rich have been in communities or masterminds or academies or whatever word makes sense, really, really heavily, kind of 10 years ago is when it started. I think on the internet at least, and like gated communities, so you have to pay to get in, pay to play, and yeah, they've always existed, but everything ebbs and flows. Everything comes in and out like the tide. That's a truism I've learned through my life. So I think that look at what the rich are doing now, um, and you'll see where business is. And I also think though that we're going more and more decentralized. If anything, globalism or globalization is reversing to an extent. So I think there will be, but that'll be at the macro and at the micro. Yes, you'll have guys like Elon Musk, big swinging dick, like gets shit done, but also a bit of an asshole. You've always had that character. That character's always been successful. But you've also got the caring, the empathy driven, the lead from the front. That will also kind of that will also work, but I think that will work in different ways for different audiences and different markets. We've definitely gone from everything for everyone, like a Facebook approach, where it's literally billions of people or billions of accounts. How many of them are bots? No idea. Um, Flip that around, and I think you'll end up with much more niche groupings. You'll have the Australian specific. You'll have the Mexican specific. You might even go down to um, the state or the city level, and you might have like the Prague specific kind of audience. And I think we're going to end up with much, much more decentralized business, and different people will win different areas. Now, I also think about this from the perspective of an Australian, because Australia is really far from everywhere. Like, you forget this. I've been living in Europe for 7 years, and you forget it literally is get on a plane, 2 hours later, you've gone across 3 countries and 4 languages. Um, Whereas in Australia, get on a plane 2 hours later, you still haven't even made it to New Zealand. And yeah, New Zealand's a little bit different, but they're kind of two sides of the same coin. So Australia has to, by definition, have its own kind of micro economy, micro influences, all that sort of thing. I then also, my best mate lives in Argentina right now, and his next door neighbor is actually an Argentinian online radio station. But they only service the Argentinian market, even though they're online. So I think you're going to have the characters will still be there. People love a character, people love a story. I just think you'll have people right at the top across the whole infrastructure, your AWSs, I won't say Amazon because Amazon sucks in Australia, but AWS is good. Microsoft is across the top, or Fonterra, the milk company out of New Zealand, that literally everyone who drinks milk has had a Fonterra product some stage in their life. And then you'll also have those kind of much, much, much smaller brands, much smaller businesses that are servicing the needs of geography and industry. But I can't think of any good names. But there's a book called Tiny Giants, or something like that. It's businesses that actively chose to stay small. These are American small, so like 500 employees. Whereas in Australia, that would be considered like a solid business because we're so tiny. I think it's Tiny Giants. They talk about businesses actively choosing to keep their size smaller so they don't have to go mass market. One of them's a brewery, if I remember correctly, and a few other similar businesses. But that stratification is happening at every level, and I think it'll happen. Decentralization is really the theme. Now that'll flip, by the way. I don't know if it'll be in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 1,000 years. That'll flip back the other way again, because everything ebbs and flows. You go back towards centralization making the most sense. Even now, you can see, if we use technology, and I'm a tech guy, so if we think about the ebbs and the flows, well, when computers were first bought out, there was a mainframe, and then you just had a terminal that you would type into. Then it got cheaper and more effective to buy a really, really souped up laptop or desktop, and that would be the thing where all of the processing was done. And now we're back at the other way. Cloud, effectively, it's just a mainframe and you've got a terminal that you talk into. Yeah, it's a hell of a lot more powerful, but things ebb and flow, and centralization and decentralization in almost every area of life. That's going to happen in business, and that's going to happen geopolitically, and that's where I think we're going next. Especially when we talk about the kind of the idea of the mastermind and maybe academy, something like that. That idea, more gated communities, more smaller groupings, of really hyper focused. Now, I don't know how you turn that into a business, because if you've only got 1,000 people in one of those groups, or you've only got 500 people, it's tough to run it at scale. You either have to charge them a lot of money because you need a community manager, you need the tooling to do it, you need someone to actually moderate the calls. And even if you get a community member to be the moderator on every call, well, you need someone who manages the moderators and supports them, and conflict resolution, all that sort of thing. So masterminds are expensive to run on the back end, like every service business. So I don't know how you'll do that at scale without the scale. And we'll see.
AI moderators, I would say, like a central AI GPU slash the center of the community would be this AI aggregating all the data of the members and feeding back value. That would also be the proprietary moat of this mastermind, of this community. Anyway, interesting times for sure. Scott, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so as I said, I'm launching the newsletter very, very soon. Let me start again. www.thesalesmastermind.com/newsletter, or just Google the Sales Mastermind. That's going out very soon. If you get this today, you'll probably get issue number 1 or number 2. Jump on there. You can learn more about me, see more about that. And if you want to as well, there's a little bonus there, that the 5 mistakes that all founders make when they start selling. It's a little PDF that I've put together that people absolutely love. So check it out.